The sound of muffled sobs echoed through the dusty trail as Cole Newsome pulled his horse to a stop, the setting sun casting long shadows across the desolate Kansas landscape of 1875. Squinting against the dying light, he spotted them two small figures huddled beneath a withered cottonwood tree. A boy, no more than 8 years old, sat crying, his arms protectively wrapped around a younger girl who lay motionless beside him. Cole dismounted, his spurs jingling in the silence as he approached cautiously. The boy looked up, his face streaked with dirt and tears, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "What happened here, son?" Cole asked, crouching down to the child's level, careful to keep his voice gentle despite his imposing frame. The boy clutched his sister tighter. "Ma and Pa got the fever. Then they just stopped waking up." His voice cracked. "We've been walking for days. Emma's sick too, she won't eat nothing." Cole touched the little girl's forehead, feeling the burning heat of fever. He'd seen this too many times, orphans left to fend for themselves in the unforgiving frontier. Without thinking twice, he made a decision that would change all their lives forever. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles east of here," he said, removing his bandana and wetting it from his canteen to cool the girl's forehead. "Come home with me, both of you. We'll get your sister well again." The boy hesitated, years of caution evident in his young eyes. "I promise you'll be safe," Cole added. "What's your name, boy?" "Thomas," the child whispered. "And she's Emma." Cole nodded, gathering the feverish girl into his arms while helping Thomas onto his horse. As they rode toward his ranch, Cole couldn't have known that these two orphans would lead him to a love he never expected to find. The journey to Cole's ranch was mostly silent, broken only by the rhythmic hoofbeats and occasional whimper from Emma. Thomas sat in front of Cole, rigid with uncertainty but too exhausted to protest. When the modest ranch house came into view, silhouetted against the darkening sky, Cole felt the boy relax slightly. "Home," Cole said simply, guiding his horse toward the lantern light glowing from the front window. As they approached, the door swung open and a woman stepped onto the porch, her figure illuminated from behind. "Cole, is that you? I was getting worried." "Elizabeth," Cole called out, "I need your help." Elizabeth Norwood hurried down the steps as Cole dismounted, carefully holding Emma in one arm while helping Thomas down with the other. The moment Elizabeth saw the children, her expression shifted from concern to understanding. "Oh my," she breathed, immediately reaching for Emma. "This child is burning up. Found them alone on the Wichita Trail," Cole explained. "Parents died of fever." Elizabeth's experienced hands gently took Emma from Cole. "Let's get her inside right away. The boy too, he looks ready to collapse." Thomas looked up at Cole questioningly. "This is Miss Elizabeth," Cole explained. "She's the schoolteacher from town. She's been staying here to help me with my sister's children while my sister's away visiting family in St. Louis." Elizabeth gave Thomas a warm smile. "Don't you worry, young man. We're going to take good care of both of you." Inside the modest ranch house, Elizabeth moved with efficient purpose, directing Cole to prepare the small guest room while she laid Emma on the kitchen table to examine her. "Thomas, when did your sister last eat or drink?" Elizabeth asked, pressing a cool cloth to Emma's forehead. The boy stood awkwardly by the door, twisting his worn cap in his hands. "Yesterday morning, madam, we had some berries and water from the creek." Elizabeth nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. "Cole, we need to get fluids in her." "Can you heat some broth?" Cole moved to the stove, stoking the dying embers and hanging a pot over the fire. He watched as Elizabeth tended to Emma with skilled, gentle movements. At 32, Elizabeth had been the town's schoolteacher for 6 years, but her knowledge extended far beyond books. Everyone in Winchester County knew to call on Miss Norwood when sickness struck. "Thomas, you must be hungry too," Cole said, noticing how the boy's eyes followed his every movement around the kitchen. "Let's get some food in you while Miss Elizabeth helps your sister." As the night deepened, they worked together to care for the children. Thomas, after devouring a bowl of stew and cornbread, finally succumbed to exhaustion on a blanket by the fire. Emma's fever raged on, her small body fighting against whatever illness had taken hold. "I think it's just exhaustion and hunger, not the fever that took their parents," Elizabeth whispered to Cole as they sat vigil by Emma's bedside. "With proper care, she should recover." Cole nodded, studying Elizabeth's face in the lamplight. The schoolteacher had always kept a certain distance from him, despite their frequent interactions when his niece and nephew attended her school. Tonight, that invisible barrier seemed to have fallen away. "It was good of you to bring them here," she said softly. "What else could I do?" Cole replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Leave them to die on the trail." Elizabeth's hand briefly touched his arm. "Many would have. This territory isn't known for its kindness to orphans." Cole thought of his own sister, widowed 2 years ago, struggling to raise her children alone until she remarried. He knew too well how precarious life could be. "They can stay here as long as they need," he said firmly. Elizabeth's eyes, the color of summer sage, studied him with new interest. "You're a good man, Cole Newsome. Better than most give you credit for." Before Cole could respond, Emma stirred, whimpering in her sleep. Elizabeth immediately turned her attention back to the child, leaving Cole to wonder at the strange warmth her words had kindled in his chest. Dawn broke with pale fingers of light stretching across the plains. Cole, who had dozed in a chair by the fireplace, awoke to find Thomas standing before him, small face solemn with unasked questions. "Your sister's fever broke in the night," Cole said before the boy could speak. "Miss Elizabeth is with her now." Relief washed over Thomas's face. "Are you really letting us stay here, mister?" Cole nodded, stretching his tall frame. "For as long as you need." "Why?" The directness of the child's question caught Cole off guard. He considered his answer carefully. "Because everyone deserves someone to catch them when they fall." Thomas seemed to accept this, nodding with a wisdom beyond his years. "Pa always said to be wary of other men's kindness, said it usually comes with a price." "Your pa was right to be cautious," Cole acknowledged, "but sometimes people help just because it's the right thing to do." Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, her honey-brown hair falling loose from its usual neat arrangement. Despite the night's vigil, her eyes were bright. "Emma's asking for you, Thomas. She's much improved." The boy hurried past her, and Elizabeth's gaze followed him before returning to Cole. Something unspoken passed between them, a shared moment of connection that left Cole feeling oddly vulnerable. "Thank you for staying," he said, rising from his chair. "Of course," Elizabeth replied. "Those children needed help." Cole stepped closer. Not everyone would have spent the night caring for strangers' children. A slight blush colored Elizabeth's cheeks. "I should return to town." "The school, it's Saturday," Cole reminded her. "No school today." "Even so, I have preparations. Stay," Cole said, the word emerging more forcefully than he intended. "At least for breakfast. The children will be more comfortable with you here." Elizabeth hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But only until we're certain Emma is truly on the mend." As the morning progressed, Cole watched Elizabeth with the children. She spoke to them with respect, not the condescension adults often showed to orphans. Emma, though weak, smiled at Elizabeth's stories while Thomas gradually lost his wariness, even helping Cole gather eggs from the henhouse. "Have you always lived alone, Mr. Newsome?" Thomas asked as they walked back to the house, the morning sun warming their backs. "Most of my life," Cole admitted. "My sister and her children stayed with me for a while after her husband passed, but she's remarried now." "Don't you get lonely?" Cole glanced toward the house, where Elizabeth's laugh drifted through the open window. "Sometimes," he acknowledged. "But I've got my horses and the land. It keeps me busy." Thomas looked up at him skeptically. "Ma always said people weren't meant to be alone. That's why God made Eve for Adam." Cole chuckled. "Your ma sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was," Thomas said solemnly. "She would have liked Miss Elizabeth. Says teachers are angels on earth." By midday, Elizabeth had indeed prepared to leave, despite Cole's protests that the children still needed her. Emma was sitting up in bed, sipping broth, her color much improved. "I've left instructions for their care." Elizabeth told Cole as he walked her to her horse. Emma should stay in bed another day at least. Thomas needs regular meals and rest. Cole nodded, reluctant to see her go. And what about their future? They can't stay here forever, 2 children alone with a bachelor rancher. Folks would talk. Elizabeth sighed, adjusting her bonnet. I've been thinking about that. There's an orphanage in Topeka, but no, Cole interrupted firmly. I won't send them there. I've heard stories about those places. What are you suggesting then? Cole hadn't realized he'd made a decision until the words left his mouth. I'll keep them. Elizabeth's eyes widened. Cole, raising children isn't like breaking horses. You can't just decide on a whim. It's not a whim, he insisted. Those children need a home. I have one. A home needs a mother, Elizabeth pointed out gently. Their eyes met, and the implication hung in the air between them. Cole cleared his throat. Perhaps you could visit, help them adjust, teach Thomas his letters until he's ready for school. Elizabeth studied him for a long moment. You're serious about this? I am. She mounted her horse with practiced grace. I'll return tomorrow with some of my books for Thomas, and perhaps some of my old dresses for Emma. As Elizabeth rode away, Cole felt a strange mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. He'd never considered himself a family man, yet here he was, suddenly responsible for 2 young lives. And equally unexpected was the flutter of something new whenever Elizabeth Norwood was near, something he hadn't felt since his youth. True to her word, Elizabeth returned the next day, her saddlebags filled with books, clothing, and small treats for the children. Emma, though still weak, brightened at the sight of the teacher, while Thomas eagerly examined the books she brought. These were my favorites when I was your age, Elizabeth told Thomas, showing him a worn copy of Robinson Crusoe. Perhaps we could read together after supper. The suggestion established a pattern that would continue in the days that followed. Elizabeth would arrive after school, bringing new books or supplies, staying for supper and reading with the children before returning to her small house in town. Cole found himself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that surprised him. He began finishing his ranch work earlier, ensuring he was cleaned up and presentable before Elizabeth arrived. The children noticed, of course. You like Miss Elizabeth, Emma declared one afternoon as Cole combed his hair for the 3rd time. She's a fine teacher, Cole answered carefully. Emma giggled. Thomas says you look at her like the prince looks at Cinderella in Miss Elizabeth's storybook. Cole felt heat rise to his face. Thomas should mind his own business, but the children's observations weren't wrong. With each visit, Cole found himself more drawn to Elizabeth, to her intelligence, her kindness, the way sunlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair. And sometimes, when their hands accidentally touched or their eyes met over the children's heads, he thought he glimpsed a similar awareness in her. Spring was blooming across the Kansas prairie when Cole finally gathered his courage. Elizabeth had stayed later than usual, helping Emma plant a small garden behind the house while Cole and Thomas repaired a section of fence. As twilight approached, Cole walked Elizabeth to her horse. The children were inside, washing up before bed. Elizabeth, he began, his heart hammering against his ribs. I need to ask you something. She turned to him, her expression open but guarded. Yes, these past 2 months with you coming here, helping with the children, it's been the happiest time I can remember. Elizabeth's cheeks flushed. The children have thrived in your care, Cole. You've done a remarkable job. It's not just me, he insisted. It's you too. They need you. And, he took a deep breath. I find I need you as well. Elizabeth looked down, her fingers nervously adjusting her riding gloves. Cole, I'm not asking for an answer right now, he hurried on. But I want you to know my intentions. I care for you, Elizabeth, more than I thought possible. She met his gaze then, her eyes reflecting the pink gold of the sunset. These children deserve stability, Cole, a proper family. That's what I'm proposing, he said softly, for all of us to be a family together. Before Elizabeth could respond, Thomas's voice called from the porch, Miss Elizabeth? Emma wants to show you her stitching before you go. Elizabeth gave Cole a look that promised their conversation wasn't finished. "We'll speak more of this," she said, then turned toward the house. That night, after Elizabeth had left and the children were asleep, Cole sat on his porch, staring at the stars and contemplating how drastically his life had changed since finding 2 orphan children on the trail. He'd gone from a solitary rancher to a surrogate father, his quiet home now filled with children's laughter and Elizabeth's gentle presence. The following day, Cole was repairing a corral when he spotted Elizabeth riding toward the ranch, hours earlier than her usual visit. Concern immediately gripped him had something happened in town. "Elizabeth," he called, setting down his tools and hurrying to meet her. She dismounted quickly, her expression troubled. "Cole, I need to speak with you. Is Thomas at his lessons?" Cole nodded. "Mrs. Peterson from the neighboring farm is teaching him and Emma today. What's wrong?" Elizabeth twisted her hands together. "I received a letter from the county office this morning. Someone has filed a complaint about the children's living situation here." Cole felt as though he'd been struck. "What? Who would do such a thing?" "I don't know," Elizabeth said, "but they're sending an official next week to assess whether this is an appropriate home for orphan children." Cole's jaw tightened. "This is their home now. I won't let anyone take them." "It's not that simple," Elizabeth explained gently. "Without legal adoption papers or other arrangements, they could determine the children would be better served in an orphanage or with a traditional family." "Other arrangements," Cole repeated, studying her face. Elizabeth took a deep breath. "A home with both a mother and father would be viewed more favorably." Understanding dawned on Cole. "Elizabeth, I won't ask you to marry me just to satisfy some county official." "I know that," she said quickly, color rising in her cheeks. "I'm merely explaining the situation." Cole stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I was planning to ask you anyway. Not like this, not rushed, but because I've grown to love you, Elizabeth. I think I started falling for you that first night watching you care for Emma and Thomas." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Cole, let me finish," he said gently. "These past months have shown me what my life was missing. Not just the children, but you. Your wisdom, your kindness, the way you see the good in everyone." He squeezed her hands. "I'm asking you to marry me, Elizabeth Norwood. Not for the county's sake, but for mine, for ours." Tears welled in Elizabeth's eyes. "I came here to warn you, not to force your hand." "You're not forcing anything," Cole assured her. "You're giving me the courage to ask what I've wanted to ask for weeks now." A smile trembled on Elizabeth's lips. "The timing is rather convenient, don't you think?" Cole chuckled, relieved to see her tension easing. "Perhaps, but my feelings aren't a matter of convenience. I love you, Elizabeth, and I believe you might feel something for me too." Elizabeth's gaze dropped to their joined hands. "I do," she admitted softly. "I've tried to maintain my professional distance for the children's sake, but, Cole prompted, heart racing. "But I find myself thinking of you constantly," she confessed. "Of this place, of the children. Of what it would be like to belong here with all of you." Joy surged through Cole. "Then say yes. Marry me, Elizabeth, not next week for the official, but today, now." Elizabeth laughed, surprised. "Today, that's impossible." "Why?" Cole challenged. "The Reverend is in town. We could ride in, speak our vows, and be back before supper. The children would be overjoyed." "You're serious," Elizabeth realized, studying his face. "More serious than I've ever been about anything," Cole confirmed. "Unless you need more time," Elizabeth silenced him by reaching up and pressing her lips gently to his. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. "No more time needed. Yes, Cole Newsome, I will marry you, today." The impromptu wedding was simple but meaningful. Reverend Johnson, though surprised by their sudden appearance and request, was happy to perform the ceremony in the small church. The only witnesses were the Reverend's wife and the local shopkeeper who happened to be passing by. When they returned to the ranch, the children were initially confused by Elizabeth's presence so early in the day, but their confusion quickly turned to excitement when Cole and Elizabeth shared their news. "Does this mean you're our ma now?" Emma asked Elizabeth, her small face serious. Elizabeth knelt down to the child's level. "If you would like me to be, yes, But I know you had a mother who loved you very much, and I would never try to replace her." Emma considered this thoughtfully. "I think Ma would want us to have a new Ma since she had to go to heaven. And I want it to be you." Thomas, more reserved, approached Cole. "Are we really staying here forever now? No orphanage?" Cole placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is your home for as long as you want it to be, and now we're a proper family." Thomas nodded, his expression solemn. "I'll work hard and learn everything you can teach me, Mr. Newsome." "Cole," he corrected gently. "You can call me Cole, or," he hesitated, "whatever feels right to you." That evening, as the four of them sat around the dinner table, Cole looked at the faces of his newfound family and marveled at how completely his life had transformed in just a few months. From a solitary existence to this, a home filled with love and purpose. When the county official arrived the following week, he found not a bachelor rancher housing orphans inappropriately, but a proper family. Cole and Elizabeth had their marriage certificate ready. Along with papers, they'd begun filing for the legal adoption of Thomas and Emma. The official, after interviewing the children and inspecting the home, left satisfied that they were in good hands. As spring turned to summer, the ranch flourished under the care of its expanded family. Elizabeth continued teaching at the school but returned home each day to help Thomas with additional lessons. Emma's garden bloomed with wildflowers and vegetables, and she took great pride in contributing to their meals. Cole found himself working with renewed purpose, expanding the ranch operations with an eye toward the future, a future that now included children who would someday inherit the land he loved. One evening in late summer, as Cole and Elizabeth sat on the porch watching the children chase fireflies in the twilight, Elizabeth leaned her head against Cole's shoulder. "Did you ever imagine this would be your life?" she asked softly, "when you found them that day on the trail?" Cole slipped his arm around her waist, drawing her closer. "Not in my wildest dreams. I thought I was just helping two lost children." He kissed the top of her head. "I didn't realize they would lead me to everything I never knew I wanted." Elizabeth smiled, placing her hand over his. "When I first came to Winchester County, I thought teaching would fulfill me completely. I never expected to find a family of my own." "Any regrets?" Cole asked, studying her profile in the fading light. Elizabeth turned to face him fully. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner." She hesitated, then added with a smile, "Though soon enough, it seems, for our family to grow even more." Cole's brow furrowed in confusion before understanding dawned. "Elizabeth, are you saying?" She nodded, her eyes bright with happy tears. "By spring, there will be 5 of us instead of 4. Joy unlike anything Cole had ever known washed over him. He gathered Elizabeth in his arms, his heart too full for words. Over her shoulder, he watched Thomas showing Emma how to cup her hands around a firefly, their laughter carrying across the yard in the summer twilight. Who would have thought that 2 orphan children found on a dusty Kansas trail would lead to such happiness? That a moment of simple human kindness would blossom into a love and family that filled every corner of his once empty home. Winter came and went, and with the first wildflowers of spring, Elizabeth gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named James, after Cole's father. Thomas, now 10, took his role as big brother seriously, helping with chores and proudly showing James the ranch when he was old enough to toddle alongside him. Emma, flourishing under Elizabeth's guidance, developed a talent for storytelling, and often entertained her baby brother with tales of princesses and cowboys. 5 years after that fateful day when Cole found 2 orphans beside the trail, the Newsome Ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous in the county. Cole and Elizabeth had added a second story to the house to accommodate their expanding family, which now included James and his 2-year-old sister Sarah. On the anniversary of their wedding, Cole took Elizabeth for a ride to the old cottonwood tree where he'd first found Thomas and Emma. They dismounted and stood together, looking across the prairie that stretched to the horizon. "It's strange to think how close we came to never meeting," Elizabeth mused, her hand warm in his. If you'd taken another trail that day, Cole shook his head. I believe some things are meant to be, Elizabeth. Those children needed us, but I think we needed them just as much. Elizabeth smiled, leaning into his embrace as they watched the sunset paint the Kansas sky in brilliant golds and pinks. A broken-hearted orphan boy crying beside his sister, and a lonely cowboy who said, "Come home with me both." Who would have thought those simple words would create such a beautiful life? I thank God every day for guiding me down that trail, Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. For giving me the courage to bring them home and for bringing you into our lives. As they rode back to the ranch, where Thomas and Emma would be watching over their younger siblings, Cole reflected on the journey that had brought them all together. From grief and loss had come healing and love. From a chance encounter on a dusty trail had grown a family bound not by blood, but by something even stronger, the choice to love and belong to one another. And as the lights of their home came into view, with smoke curling from the chimney and children's silhouettes visible through the windows, Cole knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the simplest acts of kindness, and that home isn't a place at all, but the people who fill your heart.